Hello and welcome to what I'm going to call Bad Business Fridays. I think Fridays are going to be fun. We're going to talk about the many terrible decisions corporate America is making, many of the terrible decisions the government makes, and you know what? To switch it up some days, we'll talk about the good things these businesses and government agencies are doing. But I think it's most fun to talk about bad business, and today we are going to talk about a very well-known bank which I worked for. So in between kind of on my entrepreneurial highs, I had some lows, and during those lows I worked restaurants and banks. One particular low, I think I did bartending, restaurant, and then 2 banks. Well, today I want to talk about the second bank that I worked for, and it is a very well-known bank. You've definitely heard of it, and for the sake of this video we're going to call it Bank of A Continent, because I don't want to just spill the beans on this one. I feel like they have too many lawyers to make that a good choice. I don't know, who cares, right? You can guess who it is just by Bank of A Continent. So anyway, I worked here. This is the second bank I worked at. I only worked there for maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months. I don't remember how long. It was very brief. Now the bank before them was much smaller. It was regional, and they put you through over 3 months of training. It was amazing training. They did a really good job. This big worldwide bank put us through about a week and a half of training, and because I had already had the prior training, I went through, it was probably supposed to be several weeks or maybe even a month of training. I went through it about a week and a half because I had already been through all this. I already knew the game, and I could just kind of skip the videos. It wasn't even in person. Like the bank before them was in person. You had real teachers, you know, but this one was just videos online in the back of the building. You didn't even go off site for like a traditional kind of education at all. So you do a week and a half, and then you're kind of out there on the floor, if you want to call it that, whatever. I was in retail banking. So retail banking, you know, it's not the nice banking where you make, you know, $250,000 a year, you know, trading stocks. Or no, I was retail banking. So think of it like working in, you know, what you would think of retail, but with the ability to sit from time to time, right? So I get in, I start to notice that this bank, even though it's bigger, even though it makes $4 billion a year, even though it's supposedly like the professionals, right? This is where you graduate my little bank and you want to go here. They didn't have anything together. They were downgrading all the computers in the branch because they wanted to save money, and they were putting the bankers and the in-between banker and teller positions on these pads that you could click into a dock and then kind of treat like a regular computer. Bear in mind, this is like a $4 billion a year bank, okay? And they were trying to save money at all their branches. Make it make sense. Anyway, the tellers at this time were making $11 an hour. I kid you not. I had actually gotten my girlfriend at the time on with the bank shortly after I got on with it. And I remember she got her first raise. So she was a teller, so it was a little bit different experience for her. But she got her first raise at like 36 cents. $4 billion a year this bank's making, and they're giving tellers $11 an hour. The CEO at the time, a little whiny guy named Brian, he would put out these newsletters every month with just this whiny frown, just sad look on his face, pretending he cared about the employees and the customers. That dude made, the year I worked there, he made $11 million bonus. His salary was $1 million, and then he got an $11 million bonus. Can you believe that? Can you imagine that? But they're crying about government regulations. They're crying about paying their tellers. And I'm not trying to get political here. You know, I understand how this could come off as like I'm leaning one way or another. But this is just me working at this place, getting, you know, even when I worked there, it was like, yeah, by the end of the pay period, you were running out of money. It's like, okay, you know, this is the last time I can fill up my gas tank and get to work. Like, you were literally at the end of the pay period getting paid just to get to work some more. So, you know, no love for these executives. No love for their CEO crying like he used to cry. Especially them crying because credit card fees had gotten cut and things like that. They wanted us to sell like crazy. And I remember they would, every time you had an interaction with the customer, a big yellow box would appear on the screen with an offer to upsell. And that was kind of like, They used to dangle this carrot in front of your face. All the banks do this, talking about how you can get promoted, how there's a career track, and there's really not. But it was all like, okay, if you do sales, even if you do pitches, even if you make honest attempts, it's going to look good. It's going to reflect well in your numbers, right? So I would just hit every single offer as it came. I would just ping it. It'd be like, oh, I see you have a checking account. Do you want a savings account? Oh, I see you don't have a credit card. Would you like a credit card? Oh, I see you don't have investments. It's very simple. And I was getting hundreds and hundreds of sales, and my metrics were looking very good. And the assistant branch manager, he's like, man, what are you doing? I can't figure out, how you're doing this. And it was like, well, I'm literally just following the prompts on the screen, right? So the whole thing was just a big scam at the end of the day. And I'm sure you're familiar with this if you've done business with any kind of banking as an adult. But one thing that I will never forget about working for this megacorp is a day laborer came in, and he had about $70-something check. And the check was written on Bank of America. So the guy who paid the day laborers, he was an account holder at Bank of America, and he paid the day laborers from his account. And when I went to cash his check for him, because I was like, yeah, I'm going to cash your check. It's drawn on our bank, of course. And when I went to run it through and cash it, it said, hey, there's a $6 fee. And so I said, well, I can't get around this fee. I better just call the manager over. I remember the only manager on at that time, because I think it was close to lunch, was the main branch manager himself. I said, hey, he's getting a $6 fee. That he shouldn't be getting this because the check is drawn on our bank. And the manager's like, no, he needs to pay the $6 fee. I'm like, oh no, he's a day laborer. He's just kind of passing through. Like, he just needs to, make money for the day. Like, and the check is literally drawn on our bank. That's the way banking has been done since banking was a thing, right? There's like, no, sorry, no exceptions. We're trying to make money here. This is a for-profit business. And it's like, yeah, but I've seen you waive fees left and right. And he's like, no, sorry, we're not waiving this guy's fee. And I tried to explain to him, I'm like, look, the check is drawn on the bank. Like, that is a service that you provide account holders, is if anyone brings a check to the bank, you will honor that and cash it. And they refused. So we had to charge this kid who had just worked, a hot 10-hour day, only for like $70. Bank of America, again, made $4 billion that year, decided they needed his $6. Because, that $11 million bonus doesn't just pop out of thin air, right? Very next customer, the very, very, very next customer, has $1 million and some change. I think about $1.5 million in his account. Comes in, he wants to deposit a check and then cash a random check, not even drawn on Bank of America, drawn on some small local bank. I said it, Bank of America. It's out there. Sorry. Anyway, sue me. So anyway, this guy comes in, $1.5 million, wants to cash a check, no problem. Bank manager comes over, waves it, kisses the guy's feet, polishes his butt, right, and moves on about his day. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. That will forever stand out in my mind as just that's the world we live in. Here in the United States and in the West in general, the biggest sin you can commit is being broke. And you will be punished for being broke. The credit system sees to it. The banking system sees to it. And again, I'm not trying to be political. I'm pretty sure my politics would surprise you. But in this situation, as a worker on the ground, without understanding socialism and capitalism and all that nonsense, it looked very bad. Crony capitalism is what I would call that. Management at this giant bank was a huge problem. They did not know what they were doing. They would just drink the company Kool-Aid and regurgitate that back out to the customers, to the employees. One of the things this major bank had us doing was telling people we couldn't do things, but saying it wasn't the bank. Both banks did this. It wasn't because of the bank. Even though it was clear policy that we couldn't do this thing, we had to tell them, sorry, I refuse to do the thing. Not the bank refuses to allow us. The bank could 100% do the thing. They didn't want to do it, and they didn't want to take responsibility. So the tellers and the bankers, they got the hit, and they got screamed at, and you just had to say, sorry, I refuse to do the thing. And it was just absurd. It was absolute absurdity. Teller drawers never got balanced. I mean, It was just a nightmare. Like I said, terrible training, terrible management. This mid-level manager driving a fancy car, he'd come through from time to time and he'd sit in the teller lanes and listen to them give their speeches. And then this little guy never sold a thing a day in his life, right? Just a middle management, worthless cog would come in and explain to these tellers who were brutally busy how they need to upsell in this direction or they need to say things with this inflection. I mean, the guy, little just twerp of a man. But he drove a fancy car, you know, I'm sure he was just kind of placed in that position. Just a worthless little guy would come through and just criticize everybody. It was absolute insanity. It really was. But one of the best stories I have from working here, just so you can see how incompetent management was and how poorly run everything was. We had a banker. She was opening an account for someone. She comes to one of the tellers with a check. She knew that the teller was kind of gullible and they were friends. And she says, hey, I need you to, go ahead and authorize this check or whatever the case may be from this brand new account. So she signed off on it. The limit was above hers. It was $5,000, and when you're first starting out, you get like a $1,000 limit to authorize. So she went and she got the teller manager to authorize this check. Well, the banker then pocketed the check, went around, cashed it at an ATM, and then took off with her boyfriend to another country. So one morning we come in and bank security is there and they're making a whole big thing of everything, and they end up firing the teller and firing the teller manager. Now the teller manager was 2 years from retirement. And you have to understand, like, this was a trust con. This banker had an older banker had befriended a college-age girl, and so the college-age girl thought they were friends. She looked up to her and she trusted her, so she did what she told her to do. And then the teller manager trusted her girl, her employee, to come with her, knowing how to do the right thing. So this poor college-age girl runs out of the bank crying. I mean, middle of the morning rush, crying her eyes out, running to her car. Bank manager tells us, oh, she's on her time of the month. Don't worry about it. She quit, blah, 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 no big deal. Then the teller manager gets fired. Again, less than 2 years away from retirement. They fire her for signing off. And it's $5,000. Who gives a crap? It's nothing to Bank of America. Nothing. And they got the money back. They probably ended up getting the girl. I don't know the whole story. I never really cared to look into it. I quit shortly after that. But it was insane. And then their little corporate security guy coming around here like he's anything. The whole thing was just a clown show. I'm surprised that the bank's corporate security didn't roll up in a clown car. These guys were such jokes, man. So the whole thing, between the constant sales pressure, the lack of professional management, the lack of knowledgeable management, these corrupt, disgusting CEOs, the whole thing was just a big joke. It was a nightmare. The protocols they make you adhere to, saying that you refuse to do something when the bank is not allowing you, just constantly pushing products on customers and making the customer experience not what it used to be. Banking used to not be like that. They're just, I guess, greedy, I don't know. They're just so greedy and out of touch, right? And it's a lot of nepotism. It's a lot of unearned promotions. I got out of there. This was the last place I worked before I got back into business again. Because, I had to work a second job while I worked there. And I would just work and work and work on getting out of there. And I had told the manager one day, I was like, look, I don't know if I want to work here anymore. And he goes, well, you need to let me know. So one day I came in and said, I for sure don't want to work here. Here's my 2 weeks notice. And they went ahead and they counted me out and told me I could take off because, you're not allowed to work there, I guess, once you put in notice because you're around all that money. I figure that's their reasoning. Most liberating day of my life. Banking, when I had moved to a larger city from the country and from small towns and had that experience most of my life, I still thought people were good. Like if I ran across someone who was being a jerk, I was just like, that dude's having a bad day. No big deal. Banking, oh man. After that, that's when I just became so critical of society and just, it's like that retail, anyone who's ever worked retail knows just what a soul-crushing experience it is, because it's you against the customers, and the customers are terrible, unreasonable, just horrible people, and then it's you against management. And management is always shirking responsibility, always looking for a way to get one over on you, and they're incompetent and lazy. So you're squished between two dumb forces and you're just kind of stuck in the middle. So yeah, that's my rant. Big continental or worldwide, I guess, bank. Everybody's heard of it. I let it slip. My bad. Sue me. Just an awful experience. And I don't even want to go into how they rate good customer. You're not a good customer because of what you would think doing the right thing. These banks consider you a good customer if they can take advantage of you. You know, are you overdrafting? A lot of people think, oh man, I overdrafted. That's terrible. Oh, banks love that. Banks absolutely love it. And this is the good old days of the $48 overdraft charge. You know, so these banks are just corrupt. I think credit unions aren't any better, but man, if you can go with a credit union, go with a credit union. I just hope crypto gets to the point where we can just cut banking altogether. I mean, it's a corrupt industry these days. It's crony capitalism. And it's just out of touch people who've never done anything but, go to college, right? Dad paid for college. Dad paid for a good fraternity. The good fraternity got them into these like high level executive positions, and now they don't know what they're doing. This Bank of a continent, as we'll keep saying, it was like they weren't even trying. It was like, people were going to come to them anyway, so they didn't really have to try. And it's like, if you have a decision, they would always pick the worst possible, most illogical decision ever. It was insane. It was crazy to see. It was a terrible experience. There was almost nothing good about it. From open to close, it was constant go. At this bank, it was constant go, constant customers. You only got 30 minutes for lunch. The managers were just terrible. And the customers were awful. The customers were awful. So, yeah, America, banking in America, I'm sure it's like this in Western Europe. I'm sure it's retail hell, right, at the end of the day. But you get to sit down a little bit more. That's all. All right. I hope you all have a good weekend.